whatever lands you find yourself calling in from. And just to say that Royal Roads University is situated on the traditional and unceded territory of the Quisapsum, the Esquimalt, and the Lekwungen Songhees speaking peoples, ancestors and families. It's just an amazingly beautiful campus, and pre-European contact, the people on the land had a beautiful reciprocity, and many still do to this day, that we can learn a lot from in going forward in good ways together. So we're really grateful to be able to be on this land and learn from each other and the land, and have that come into our pedagogies and practices. So wherever you are, just to take a moment and think about and in gratitude for the lands that you find yourself on. So over to you, Christy.
Thank you, Hilary. And I am also working from home today and joining from the lands of the Lekwungen and the Esquimalt families there. So I'm very grateful to be coming here to you today and to be able to do the work that we're doing. So my name is Christy Jones. I'm an education advisor with the university, and I'm joined today by Dr. Hilary Leighton, who did our lovely land acknowledgement for today. And then we're also joined by Tyson Atleo, who is a graduate from the MAEEC program. That's our acronym. So the Master of Arts in Environmental Education and Communication.
What a beautiful title today. Can we just go back one more? I just want this title one more time. Ask the River. Okay, we'll get to that soon. Sorry, go ahead, Christy. You know, I can't resist.
No, it is beautiful. So to go through our agenda really quickly here, if you haven't already, feel free to type into the chat box and let us know where you're joining from, as we have just introduced ourselves today. We're going to start off with a brief overview of the Royal Roads experience, what it's like to be a student here. We'll go through some program-specific information, and then we'll begin our conversation today. So after that, we'll go through the application process really quickly, but we want to welcome your questions throughout the whole presentation. So don't feel like you need to hold off until the very end to ask your questions. You can type them as we go, and then we'll try to answer them towards the end or whenever it comes up. So if you have any questions that you've thought of, chances are somebody else has thought of the same one too, so don't be shy when anything comes up for you. Alrighty, so a few of the things that we value at Royal Roads. The first one is first names first. So we have a very personalized experience that we give here at the university. We have a smaller student body, and that means that anybody that you communicate with at the university, whether it's obviously your classmates, but also your professors, anybody from student services, financial aid, we all like to have a more personalized experience with each other. There will be no need to memorize a student number or anything like that, because we know you by your first name. The next one on here is Learn Together Forever. So that's a reference to the cohort model that we have in many of our programs at Royal Roads. And it means that you often start off your program with a group of people and continue throughout the whole program until the very end. And it creates this amazing connection with this group of people that really help support you, that help you learn throughout the whole process. And I'm also a graduate from a Royal Roads program, and I have to say this was my favorite part about it, was just I was amazed by how much I actually could learn from the people within my own program. And oftentimes they come with just a wealth of life experience, work experience that you just aren't exposed to. So it really becomes this network that you can really utilize for years to come, whether that's professionally or also personally. The next one on here is Life is Also an Education. This is a reference to our flexible admissions model, which we'll get into more at the end of the presentation. But we like to look at who you are holistically and what you are bringing into the program. So beyond just what your professional background is, what your educational background is, or what your transcript says, it's more what is the life experience you have that has brought you to where you are today. And finally, our real world classroom. So you learn from what we call here scholar practitioners at Royal Roads. So anybody that you are learning from has both current research and or industry knowledge that they're working with. So anything that you are learning in your program is very current and up to date and allows you to address the real world problems that we are facing as a society. So it's not just textbook learning, you're learning from people who are out in the industry today.
And Christy, when you came and did your graduate certificate in sustainable community development, you worked on a live case, didn't you?
I
City.
did. It was, yeah, a very real world
Mhm,
issue that we were working with.
mhm.
So that was, it really put into context, like, yes, you learn a lot from doing group projects and things like that, and the interpersonal aspect that we all have to deal with in our careers, in our scholarly endeavors, anything like that. But it puts into focus the types of situations you'll be actually working within in your career. So we worked with the city of Langford, which is a local city nearby, on some critical issues that they were facing. So it was very, they were counting on us to really provide some insights on certain problems. And it really added a lot of meaning to what we were doing, and
Yeah.
made it not just a case study to work off of.
Yeah, we say research that makes a difference, it's true. Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks.
absolutely. And we're also in Ashoka U Changemaker campus. This is a designation that's been given to a select number of institutions, and we're really proud of it. It means the type of education that we provide is really interdisciplinary, it's really solutions oriented, it's very entrepreneurial. So that's what we try to infuse into all of our programs and everything that we do at Royal Roads. And of course, many of us haven't been able to be on our campus in quite a while, but if you aren't familiar with where we are and the types of locations you can see around our campus, here's a little snapshot. So we have Hatley Castle in the top left-hand corner there. And then you can kind of see behind the castle, there's in a beautiful mountain range, there's the ocean. So the ocean that you're looking at is the Esquimalt Lagoon on the bottom left-hand corner. So you can view a lot of wildlife from here. It's a bird sanctuary. It's a really tranquil place to just go and explore. And then we also have a number of manicured gardens that you can wander through. So the top right-hand corner is the Japanese gardens, but we also have the rose gardens. We have many different places, the Italian gardens. And then on the non-manicured side, we have beautiful, beautiful forests and trails for you to explore as well. So you can kind of see around the castle, there's lots of trees. That is just a tiny little picture of it, but we have over 500 acres of old growth forest. So if you do love nature, it's a great place to come and just explore. And then on the bottom right-hand corner, it's more of an ode to the fact that we've been doing online learning for 25 years. So this is something that we made a large part of our programs from the very beginning of Royal Roads, and it's something that's obviously made us be able to adapt very well with what has come with COVID and all of those types of things. So it's something that we're really proud of, whether you do get to come on campus for a shorter residency or anything like that, or we've been able to adapt our residencies to an online format as well, which has also been really great. So that's us in a nutshell.
Mhm. Beautiful.
Okay, so Hilary, if you would like to go into the program structure.
Sure. Next slide, please. So our delivery model is called blended. So it's a blend of both online and on-campus learning. Next slide, please. So whoops, we can go back one more. The beauty of the what we call the MEEC program, the MA in Environmental Education and Communication program, is it starts with a graduate certificate. I mean, some people do start with just the graduate certificate and then ladder that into the MA later on. So the graduate certificate is, next slide, please, the first 3 courses in the program. The first 2 are in residency and the third one is online. It's 5 months long. And as I said, the first 2 courses are 3 weeks on campus, 2 courses at once, and then 1 distance-based semester, and it's 9 credits. Next slide. The courses are, developing an environmental understanding, foundations for environmental communication, and learning theory and program design. So it gives you a really beautiful beginning, a significant beginning in EEC to have the graduate certificate. Oh, I love seeing this picture. This is taking some of our students out to Woody's Lagoon. Anyways, yes, let's go forward, Christy. Thanks. The second part of the MA is the graduate diploma. If you decide to do just all the coursework, you'd graduate with a diploma in EEC. Next slide, please. And the format is 1 year long. So it has 2 residencies. First, the one that I had just talked about, and then a second year residency, 3 weeks on campus, and 1 distance-based semester in between those 2 residencies, and it's 21 credits. Next slide. So again, those first 3 courses, and what we build on there is a systems perspective course, 504. We do an approach to research in environmental education and communication. And then the second residency is 586, the Biosphere and Sustainability, which is usually a field school delivered in various Indigenous communities, coastal communities in BC. And 509, the course I teach, Ecopsychology at the Intersection of Theory and Practice. So that comprises all of the coursework for the diploma. Next slide. And if you carry on to finish with a thesis or a major project completion, you will get the MA. You will end with the MA and graduate in EEC. Next slide. So it's 2 years and a little bit long. It's got 3 on-campus residencies. So those first 2, and then a final 2-week wrap-up residency about implementing and what you're going to do with what you've learned. There's distance learning in between those residencies, obviously, and the whole graduate degree is 36 credits. Again, as I said, it includes the thesis or a major research project and an elective. And the next slide will show us all of those courses. Right, so again, it's the same courses I had just spoken about with the diploma, but additionally, you'll see there's 690, which is the thesis, or 695 is the major research project, which also would require an elective. And then 680 is the final residency, Living Our Learning, Implementation to Action. Okay, next slide, please. Aha, next slide, please. And here we are at Tyson. Thank you so much for being here today, Tyson. I'm just going to partially read your bio and to introduce you, but say a little bit about how we know each other. And then I'm, just going to ask you to speak about your research. And I have a few questions, but we'll just have an open conversation if that works for you. So Tyson Atleo is a hereditary chief in line of the Ahousaht Nation. As the Natural Climate Solutions Program Director for the Nature Conservancy in Canada, Nature United, Tyson works to advance programs to ensure significant reductions in greenhouse gas emissions with a focus on catalyzing the implementation of nature-based climate solutions as a critical means of combating the global climate crisis across Canada, the US, and with colleagues in other countries around the world. For his nation, Tyson served a 4-year term as the youngest elected councillor in Ahousaht territory, in Ahousaht history, and led the development of and continues to serve as the vice president for Ahousaht Stewardship and Sustainable Economic Development Corporation, the Moktusis Hauholthi, I'm sorry if I didn't do that properly, Stewardship Society, or MHSS. Tyson also worked for many years with the Government of Canada and as a consultant focused on Indigenous community development and engagement, is a successful entrepreneur in the housing sector, and co-founded the Gathering Voices Society, a charity focused on advancing innovative Indigenous-led solutions to conservation and development challenges. And of course, Tyson has just recently graduating from the MAEEC program. And my experience of Tyson is that he's just a very warmly intelligent, kind, and keenly awake and aware person who really deeply understands the reciprocity necessary with the sentient Earth if we're going to be positive planet-shaping forces and really change our behaviors and move forward in a good way. So I would love to turn it over to you, Tyson, and just say welcome. Can you please tell us a bit about your research? Where does Ask the River come from?
Sure. Thank you, Hilary, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm always happy to work with railroads and talk about my experience and share that with prospective students or current students and continue to build the community that makes railroads the amazing place that it is. I posted in the chat that I also did my undergraduate in the BAPC program, and it had me coming back because of the way the program is structured, which served me as someone who was deep into a career at that time. I needed that flexibility and that support, and it, even in the undergraduate program, worked extremely well for me. So I'm very grateful for my time at Royal Roads, and I'm always willing to give back and respect that relationship as such, which is a practice that is informed by obviously my culture. So thank you, Hilary, for the invitation. Chatting with you all today from Victoria as well, the Kwangin People's Territories, but I'm from the Ahousaht First Nation, as Hilary has mentioned, west coast of Vancouver Island, offshore from Tofino, northwest, 35, 40-minute boat ride, depending on the swell. An isolated community, but a large isolated community amongst the Nuu-chah-nulth cultural peoples. And I, as Hilary mentioned, fulfill a major portion of my father's hereditary responsibilities. My father's name is MAEEC, Tyson Atleo, and he's one of the three principal hereditary chiefs of our nation. And I've been working on his behalf for the last, I guess, 14 years now in that role, which is a wide variety of responsibilities, but it is an introduction to my research, I guess. There are several reasons why I chose to do the research that I did, which is titled Ahousaht Law and Chinook Salmon Conservation in the Meejan River. The Meejan River being a particular watershed in Ahousaht territories where the Chinook in particular, as one of the 5 species of salmon, are in a great deal of trouble on the verge of extirpation from that river. And for those of you that are unaware, and I'm sure many of you know, salmon in each watershed are genetically diverse. And so if you lose Chinook in one watershed in particular, that family grouping, that genetic stock of salmon are gone and can't be replaced, even with the hatchery models and so on. And those are details for another time, but I chose to research Ahousaht Law and Chinook salmon conservation in the Meejan River for several reasons. As stated, I'm the son of one of our hereditary leaders and fulfill that responsibility in a nation where our hereditary governance system is relatively intact. It's partially intact, but we're working on making it more intact again. And the governing and development of our community continues to be a large part of the responsibility of our hereditary system, obviously in partnership with our Western Chief and Council system. And the success of governing requires the continuation and adaptation of our cultural traditions. And so that's something we know from our history. And so revisiting those traditions, those laws from an academic perspective allowed me to blend it with what I'm very passionate about in my professional career, which is environmental conservation. So as mentioned, I work for the Nature Conservancy. It's the self-proclaimed largest conservation organization, 76 countries and 4,000 staff, many of whom are scientists. And so concerned about conservation issues globally, this allowed me to focus locally on a problem that is deeply complex and is representative of larger ecological crises that we're facing across the world, and explore that connection to other systems of knowledge outside of science, of course, which I highly value, such as our Indigenous traditions of governance, particularly governance and accountability, and how those can inform successful conservation practices. And so I believe the sharp decline of the Meejan River Chinook is representative of much larger and equally complex global conservation concerns. And that my experience in the conservation sector shows that there are significant gaps in strategies and a need for non-traditional research rooted in alternative systems of knowledge to inform better conservation practices. And there are very few places, in my opinion, you can go for non-traditional research where institutions are supportive of that. I think that's changing, but this was the place I found where I was able to do that, where I was able to research with the aim of understanding the systemic nature of Chinook decline as being caused by both ecological and scientifically measurable impacts, as well as the socio-political threats, such as the degradation of our laws over time.
Mm. You know, your grandfather, Richard Atleo, Omique, was at your defense recently, and he said the same thing. He said he was very grateful for a place where you could do the kind of research that was authentic for you, because it wasn't the case when he was doing his doctorate. And so, you know, let's hope that things are changing. But
Maybe
yeah,
beyond that, Hilary, if I could, both my grandparents
they
on
were
my
both
side were there, and I only hope that those who are listening in here have the opportunity to have, you know, where appropriate, their grandparents participate if possible.
Well, I loved at the beginning of the defense where you said, first and foremost, you know, you were thankful to be there and grateful. And you said, and I just want to say, every student should have their grandparents with them, supporting them along the way. I think that model itself is just beautiful and lost. You know, we've lost so much. We've forgotten so much about our intergenerational richness when we get together. And your two grandparents are also scholars in their own right and form part of the readings for our coursework too. So that's pretty beautiful. So, you know, I was happy to be at your defense and to be the chair there. And I was really taken by the artwork, the diagram that you created, that beautiful way of, you know, we're talking about other systems of knowing, other systems of knowledge, also art and expressive arts, ways to bring knowledge to bear. You felt comfortable bringing that in your thesis. And I think that in itself was kind of illuminating for you, wasn't it? That process. Can you say something about that process?
Sure.
How did you get to that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long story, and so maybe to ground it, the artwork that Hilary is referring to is a rudimentary diagram of what I perceive to be the structure of our traditional legal system for Ahousaht people, and it's one where it's hard to describe, but it's essentially a mountain and a reflection of that mountain as one whole picture, where the mountain is your physical reality and the reflection of the mountain is spiritual existence. And the concept is that they're interconnected and interrelated, and they can't be separated from one another. And if they are separated from one another, then you lose access to knowledge that is deeply systemic in that model. So that's essentially what the research was.
Well said in a nutshell. You know, but the beautiful thing too, and the beautiful thing is the nature elements, the natural elements. You could have done Venn diagrams and little bubbles. It's so beautifully linked to the natural world, and you know, and the reflection is just such a beautiful way of extending your research.
The intent there and the journey there is that natural systems inherently are deeply knowledgeable, and that our indigenous cultures, I argue, are quite simply reflections of knowledge that exists within those systems. So
Beautiful.
we don't, it's not of our creation.
Mm-hmm.
It was given to us, and those are kind of fluffy words to say that it is as a result of empirical observation of how effective natural systems are at governance and accountability, and then applying them to ourselves as models of sustainability. So in the conservation sector, it was like Indigenous people know what they're doing, and you know, in a modern context, it's not necessarily true. It's about how were our systems informed by other sources of knowledge. That's where that success comes from, and we have to figure out how to reconnect to understanding how those systems can inform how to be good human beings on this planet.
Mm-hmm. The patterns that are already there. Mm-hmm. That's where you came to ask the river.
I see. Yes. So the Meejan River is of particular political and economic importance to the Ahousaht. It has a very interesting history, and unfortunately, it was obtained by the Ahousaht through war, and that war is still being reconciled in our community. But it was for the purpose of the resources that were in that river, and with rivers as life-giving systems, we are obligated to maintain protocols with rivers in order to access those life-giving resources, which are not always just tangible. They're not always just flesh and bones or bark and branches. It's also other forms of resource like knowledge. And so in Ahousa's traditions, and there are obviously many different types of Indigenous traditions around the world, so I speak about the Ahousa's alone, we can engage with that system of knowledge to access information to inform our practices. And that is something I obviously had to do because that's my teachings. And that's what the research is about there are ways to go and do that effectively. Unfortunately, at times those ways and learning about those ways can be proprietary, but our systems of government were quite structured, and knowledge was often proprietary or different amongst different groups of people. So engaging with the river itself was very important and fundamental to this research, and done in my own way, in the way that belongs to my family, and isn't really talked about extensively in the paper itself because that's not the place for that. The place for that is there, but then I can digest the information from an academic perspective over here. And that's what I loved about it, is the blending of the two. And we're seeing that in governance models around the world. And I spoke briefly about the example from New Zealand, and now we have one in Quebec.
Yep. Yeah. Rivers with personhood.
Yes.
And to understand the world as full of subjectivity and feeling and personhood. And that I love when you just mentioned that it's not like you have to tell that story. It's how it came through you, how you metabolize that into your research and how it landed in the thesis form. But respectfully, you did bring in a very beautiful introduction to your thesis that really contextualized and provided the reader with a really beautiful understanding of where this was going to go. And it just, it was really lovely to read because it felt like it was beautiful truth. It felt like you were writing about a beautiful truth. That and as far as you could do that. So what surprised you? Did something surprise you about this research or this journey, or how has this research changed you at all? What's happened?
Thank you for the kind words about my writing. I'm always
I know. Yeah.
self-conscious of it, as I'm sure everybody is. I'll maybe talk a little bit about what surprised me about the program.
Okay, sure.
If I may, because that's where the research, like I was going to do that. I was going to do that research. That research just fits well, right? But what was most surprising about my journey through the program leading up to the research is like the serious introspection, if you're ready for it, and self-growth and development that's offered by how the courses are structured. And I'm not trying to sell the program here, but like the experience with Dr. Bob Cull, for example, where you're challenged in this program, in my opinion, to let go of some really deeply held beliefs. And that is a critical practice for adaptation. And so we talked a lot about mindfulness, right? And we worked on the practice of mindfulness really intentionally to produce really intentional results, not just for feeling good about oneself or connecting with the world around you, importantly, but like really honing in on the practices of mindfulness that allow you to be mentally flexible, right? Cognitively flexible, where your emotions and your mind are working in concert. And so the idea of letting go of really, really tightly held beliefs, there was almost nothing more satisfying to me that I've ever experienced. And just being able to just like, oh, wow, I'm just going to let that go. I'm not forgetting it. I'm not putting it in the over there. I can still hold it, but with far less tight of a grip. And when you do that, a lot more information can come in and you
Mhm.
can make informed decisions, in my opinion, way more effectively, because you're not holding on to this one thing that's like, this is the way it is and this is the way it's always going to be, which I held about my culture, some
Mhm.
cultural things. And it's like, as soon as you let go, and just more stuff can come in. And that for me is what research and education is all about. And we have stories of that, and to back that up in the experience of Via House It
Mhm.
in a really meaningful way.
Mhm.
Um, and we're experiencing it currently globally right now.
Yeah.
We have many great stories about the journey of adaptation
Mhm.
in our society. A
Mhm.
lot of lessons learned from those experiences are that the process, which exists in nature and we're a part of it, evolution, right? It's
Mhm.
bumpy, it takes time, but it is essential for survival.
Yeah.
And we're losing those tools because we think we're so resilient, because we have
Mhm.
this system around us that will take care of us no matter how hard we hurt ourselves. But we also know that that's not going to last forever. So how do we rebuild those tools for adaptation? And I think letting go of, of things like that are important.
Yeah, the program is designed to act in a, in a systems thinking way. While the content can cover that, it's also each of those programs build upon each other, each of the courses, and they are all designed to have us go through those moments, those threshold moments, those release moments, the collapse, the dark times of not knowing. We have to be able to make room for uncertainty. I mean, that's really where my hope lies most of the time, is we have room to act in uncertainty, that we can start to look at things. And I mean, I wrote down the word ventilation when you said letting go, so something more can come in. We're so tightly held usually to our beliefs and our identities. So to be able to reorganize to new levels of identity and maturation, it's like initiatory journeys, each of these little courses that you go through that build up toward your research. I mean, I was asking you, but I'm now agreeing and speaking about it's a little near and dear to my heart, let's say. Um,
A little tidbit,
so,
like,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
for example, people in Newtonals and otherwise, who weren't at the time considered Newtonals, but people have been here before there were cedar, for
Mhm.
example. Yeah, we so commonly associate our coastal peoples with cedar. Coastal peoples are technically around before cedar. So little things like that are very interesting because it proves the necessity of adaptation. And it's
Mhm.
where we learn about the secrets of adaptation.
Mhm.
Pretty good
Mhm.
places to look right around us and in our traditional societies that were good at that.
Mhm. So good. Um, so I think we probably have about 10 or 12 more minutes, but I wondered, I wondered if there was anything you wanted to speak about. I know right now people are talking a lot about the context we're in with the pandemic, any of the challenges you faced. How were you able to balance? You're a very busy person. You're doing a lot in the world. And I mean, I have visions of you just roaring off on your motorcycle. I think, you had one of those magic things where you were in two places at once sometimes, because you really have a lot going. So how did this all fit in? How did you do that? What challenges did you face?
Oh, there's so many different ways to answer that. Like there's the logistical and practical perspective, which is again back to the railroads model, works for me
Yeah.
because it's not necessarily at your own pace, but it is done in a way where you can do it your way, more
Hmm.
or less. And
Hmm.
that works well for me because then I can fit it in where I need to fit it in. So practically, uh, it was the only model that would have worked. If you're used to going to lecture halls and then you suddenly have that taken out from underneath you, I would have said that would be very challenging. But this was a natural continuation.
Hmm.
Obviously, the support for my journey in going through the thesis process was essential. But in terms of lessons learned with regard to the pandemic, a big focus of the research was the use of blended metaphor, like metaphorical practices, the whole concept of two-eyed seeing, about holding different perspectives. That alongside mindfulness practices, um, and mindfulness practices in their, like there's a breadth of, of work there, but those that can be applied to your day-to-day life are certainly learned and developed throughout this work for me. It was certainly learned and developed throughout this work for me, and built off of what I'd been trying to do before and put it into practice. So there were a lot of, like, I'd say, technical skills that were applicable, um, for making sense of the situation, and for coming
Mhm.
and for coming to terms and being at peace with it. We can't, yeah. So that's, I guess, a bit of a personal journey, right? Um,
Mhm.
but those technical tools are ones that I have been working on and developed, and the program certainly helped me with. Um, and that's not, right, not to hold on to the idea that everything's collapsing. That in fact there's a lot of resilience, and yeah.
Well,
So
systems literate students seem to know that. And, even the word apocalyptic, which can, you check the etymology on it, and it means to lift the veil to see what we couldn't have seen if we hadn't have lifted the veil. So to just start seeing things in different ways, that sometimes these are necessary darknesses that we go through, and that's how we learn adaptation. We learn it by doing. We learn it by, being in that moment and being able to move and to look around us, see what's there.
yeah, and so I can offer the how's it perspective, and that is the only other times in my life that I've been asked to be still, right, not move, stay at home, draw your blinds, is when we have very important events in our community that are deeply traditional and ceremonial, and that's the only other time in my life where I've ever experienced that, and there's real intent and purpose behind that. And I'll let people make the connections they'd like to make, but I've experienced it before when it comes to learning in our community and coming together, and then
Mhm.
the natural world implored us to do this again, so you could draw all sorts of different meaning from what's going on.
Yeah, and also, I don't know if we've ever thanked you, but what a wonderful experience that summer when the field school went to your territory, went up
Yeah.
to your territory, and you were such a beautiful steward of that group. So thank you again for that, Tyson. I know it wasn't the easiest of times, and it was such an amazing experience for people to be real with each other and be there in your community, and with everybody, you know.
Hopefully future students can take you to their communities.
Yeah, exactly. So just as we finish up, what advice would you have for somebody considering this MA? What, what might you offer to them about your experience, or, anything that you'd like to offer the folks that are online here today?
Yeah, I think it would go back to my, well, like, there's the practical and there's the theoretical. I think theoretical would be that letting go, letting it happen, being inclusive of the different sources of knowledge that come during the program is, I think, really important. There's a lot of wonderful sources of knowledge that show up, and just being open to them all is kind of ideal. I can see how the program, for some people, might be looking for more structure, but you make it what it's not about, kind of a structured. I think someone posted a comment about the other MA program, environmental management, which in my experience, having friends that have done it, is much more structured. How to do this, how to do that. This is not like that, in my opinion. This encourages you to find new ways of thinking and being for yourself and for whatever it is that you do for work. So being open being open to whatever comes your way and not prescribing what you expect to achieve, I think is a pretty cool way to approach this program, and it should produce results.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I mean, I always say the teacher's job is to interrupt the familiar. If we're just coming and hearing the same thing over and over again, then that really doesn't remind me of graduate school. Graduate school, to my mind, is the place where people start to really bring more of their own true nature. That when you were talking about uh, you know, when you're letting go of things, there's a kind of a shriving off of the things that you no longer need to take forward at this point in your life. And, we don't say it on the brochure, but I would say, from my graduate school experience, I matured. I was refining my approach to the world and the way I could deliver myself and, contribute more readily to the world. And it seems less ego-based at the end and more eco-centric coming out of a program like this.
I left with more questions than answers, which I like.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what's next for you? That's a good question.
I love my work, and so actually the produced results are that because I don't have a degree in biology, but I'm in the conservation sector, so you're always arguing with scientists about this or that, and this work does ground me and gives me the academic cred for a set of knowledge, which is valuable cred out there in the world, and I value that because those are the spaces I want to work in and connect with. So I certainly value like the outcome of the thesis work and what it produced. But I'm again left with more questions, and I want to go and explore those questions. And you and I have talked about what my interests are, which are in eco-psychology, and
Yay!
where that goes. I'm fascinated by how we think and why we think.
And the huge psychological shifts we need to make to be moved to change. Yep. And so a doctorate, you're going to go on and do a doctorate. Is that right?
Perhaps I was never one for academia, but I mean, so that's one of the surprising things is I was not like stoked on going to graduate school or anything like that, but I certainly am now. There's a lot to explore. I like being left with more questions. I like just exploring and having the forum to do so and be supported in doing so. It's nice. It's enjoyable. I think it's important, and it's certainly reflected in our traditions. There's a lot of time spent by those who are responsible for our adaptation, spent learning, spent out learning.
Is there anything you'd like to just add as a final comment, or anything you'd like to leave people with, or anything at all that's left unsaid today, or something you thought you might mention, or anything?
I don't think so. I just appreciate the opportunity to share. And I mean, if there's any questions that others have, I'd be happy to.
Yeah. So why don't we do that? Why don't we go to the question box? Is Christy around? Christy, are you here?
Yep, still here. Yeah. There is a few questions. So we did touch on the one about the differences between the MEEC program and the MEM program. I don't know if you want to touch on that one a little bit more. But we also have one that I think would be great to hear about. If someone is a year away from participating, what do you suggest that they do in the meantime to mentally prepare or mentally unlearn, relax?
Tyson, what would you say to that?
The first question's to you. I can try to the second question.
No, I'll get to the first question. The MEM and the MEEC program, well, they are different programs. Environmental management and environmental education and communication are different. There's some crossovers. I mean, we share courses like systems and developing fundamental understandings about environmental sustainability and the like. I'd say that the MEEC program has a few more teachers in it. It's really also appeals to those who teach or are called to facilitate or lead in sustainability arenas, and communicators in terms of journalists and program coordinators and communications officers for nature-based and environmental organizations. So it seems to attract, and there seems to be more of the science-based folks in the MEM program as well. There's an MSc side to it as well as an MA side to the MEM program. There's a little bit of crossover, but it gets to be pretty, I think there's a lot to be said about the structure, as Tyson said, that the MEEC program is really more arts-based and has a lot of reflective and introspective and arts-informed practice that you might not find in the MEM program quite the same, but they serve different purposes. But Tyson, do you want to take that second question?
I'll do my best. It's a big question from Catherine.
How to prepare.
Yeah, and the quotes or the second part is unlearn. So I would say it's not about unlearning. All knowledge is valuable. It's, I guess, how you use it. So it's less about unlearning and certainly more about the latter, the relaxing. But it's the whole purpose here is that, like, in my opinion, is that the program is designed to help you with that, right? So I
Mhm.
think what was helpful for me going into the program was I'm very privileged in that I have a strong tradition and a family that raised me with it and a community that raised me with it. So I have a connection to an awareness and understanding of who I am and why I'm designed the way I am designed.
Yeah.
And so going into the program, um, I think that's useful to do a bit of exploration of where we come from, why we think the way we do,
Mhm.
um, and just being curious about that. And then I think the program's intended to it's designed to help you on that journey. So if you're ready
Yeah.
for that journey,
Yeah.
if you're not ready for that journey, that that's a question to ask yourself. If you're ready to open up and
Mhm.
think a little bit more abstractly about your existence, then I think it's well positioned. You're well positioned going into this program for that.
And we have some science people who come in and they're often shocked. They can use, first person, I, they can write in the I vernacular, and they're quite shocked by that. And I'm just thinking of one of our students right now who's working in nature-based conversation, nature responsive conversations, and her writing is just beautiful. She comes from a biology background, so she's mixing biology with this cross-species communication, and it's just never been better. Talk about two-wide seeing. That's just never been better to see this coming up, and from some very unexpected places where people were really holding on to science as the truth rather than one of the ways, one of these systems of knowledge that's important. So there's, this really helps people, I think, shift to see that, as you had said earlier, these other systems of knowledge can be appreciated and what that means. And bringing in our families and our ancestry and our earliest inklings and our proclivities and passions and powers from when we were young, because often that stuff gets traded up for school and family and things we have to do, and parts of ourselves get put away. So this is, grad school is kind of part of that, is bringing out more of your own authentic interests and passions. And I think you followed that path. You fell into that pretty easily. You have great supports for that. But that sometimes surprises people, that they can be more of who they are. They're not really having to write to some nameless, faceless degree granting body. They're actually doing a really profound research of self and their self in the world, how they can contribute to the world.
It took me several iterations to figure out exactly what I was going to research. It happened, but it took me a while. So I didn't come in with any preconceived notions about what the
No.
outcome was going to be.
Yeah.
I might characterize it as so familiarity with systems and like a desire to engage in systems thinking is certainly valuable. To the follow-up question from Catherine, it's like I talk about it as working within existing systems
Mm.
and reorienting them versus changing relationships too. They're two totally different bodies of work that are complementary,
Mhm.
and you can draw on both to inform how we move forward. Um, but like you will like find yourself differentiating from other people within this system if you start to think about what your relationship to the system actually is. For sure,
Mhm.
I love
Mhm.
that. I love that.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that too. Christy, is there another question in there that I might have missed?
We do have one from Emily. She says, the 3-week in-person residency and the emphasis that this program puts on bonding within the student cohort is something that is very appealing to me. I've been wondering how the pandemic has affected this part of the program.
Mhm.
And although it's hard to predict, do you know what this on-campus residency would look like for 2021?
Yeah, so good question. And Tyson had touched on the cohort model and how, important it is that we work in these groups and we carry through with everybody in our groups, or maybe Christy had said that first and foremost. Yeah, last year we did our residencies. They're not all 3 weeks. The first 2 are 3 weeks and the last one is 2 weeks. And we migrated to an online environment. And rather than just meet randomly online as some of the distance courses are, they're more asynchronous, so that if you're doing a distance course, you might meet once a week with your cohort, but you're mostly, as Tyson had said, working at your own pace and getting your assignments in on time. And there's lectures and videos, etc. But what we did is we really tried to recreate a kind of an intense residency experience without trying to completely translate it, because of course you can't translate in-person experiences to this. There's some things you can do elegantly, and there's other things we had to let go of. But for all intents and purposes, we heard back from students, and we even heard comments like magic. And I didn't know I could do this kind of work, you know, in my own backyard. So it actually gave us a great chance to illustrate that it's not exotic landscapes and vistas. It's not the campus that is the place where the learning happens, that we all have this potential right here, right wherever we are, to do this beautiful work. And then we came back, you know, we were never more than 90 minutes online together. We would come back and work in small groups or discuss. We still did arts-based projects. We still had beautiful all cohort meetings, open space on Zoom. There was lots of learning. And so this is, you know, we adapted. We were the queens and kings of adaptation. And it did work out very beautifully. But this is also testament to the people in the cohorts, how they worked together, how they found their way. And it's not forever, but this was our response to COVID. And, you know, it seemed to work out for everybody. I can't say there's any students right now who came out of first residency, you know, who were not just flying into systems and flying into their research. And people are very engaged. They're still very warmly held together, even if it is online. So we'd love to be face-to-face, but until such time as that's possible, we're proudly COVID safe. We're taking care of everyone. You know, we're acting on behalf of the collective. So our decisions are well considered and follow Ministry of Advanced Education and Ministry of Health guidelines. So that's it for now. That's where we'll be for now. And in the future, we look forward to being together. That's for sure. Yeah, we love that. Nothing quite beats that. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I mean, if you're thinking about timing too, I would say there's no time like the present. Yeah, even people who deferred last year, you know, they're gung-ho to go now, because there's no time like the present to start really, you know, figuring out how you're going to contribute to this, to the crisis that we're in, how you're going to bring to bear your own gifts and your own understandings and your own adaptations and ways forward that will contribute to the health of the whole. Because, you know, this one thing this pandemic has shown us is how inextricably linked we are. You know, it seems invisible, yet we're so closely linked. We need each other. Yeah. I hope that helped. I could go on, but I won't.
We also did a fantastic webinar about just this in September, interviewing some of our students who just come out of one of our online residencies or virtual. So I would be happy to share a link to that in the follow-up email I'm going to send as well. So you can review that session and hear a little bit more in depth about their experiences.
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, I forgot about that. That was a great seminar, and everybody had something to say about it. They were surprised by it. I can see Catherine says our BA cohort had virtual residency as we started in the beginning of the pandemic. While we wish we could be in person, we had built relationships virtually through group work and weekly collaborative calls. And yes, she's right. We've been online for many years, so it wasn't just this year. And you know, we didn't do a very good job of it, but we should have shouted it from the rooftops that, you know, there's online learning and there's online learning. We weren't just reacting, we were responding, and we were well prepared to respond in really innovative and, as I say, elegant ways. We're not trying to translate an in-person experience. We're trying to create the essence of what people would experience if they were together. So it's very nuanced. It's very different. We also had a lot of fun, so it was really great. Yeah. I think we're at the end. We just need to go through the final slides. Tyson, I want to thank you so much for coming. Your stories are just so moving, and I loved your research, and it's been great to see you again here today. And thank you for your generosity of time and thought, and always welcome.
Thanks everyone for listening to me ramble.
It was wonderful. So we'll say goodbye to Tyson, and we'll carry on with Christy finishing up how you might apply. Thanks, Tyson.
Yeah, thank you so much. So just looking at the time, I'll go over very quickly the application process and what that will look like. So we have standard admissions and flexible admissions, like I mentioned at the start of the presentation. So I'm going to go over our standard admissions first. So that means a 4-year or comparable undergraduate degree in a related field with a minimum GPA of a B from a recognized post-secondary institution, at least 2 years of relevant work experience or volunteer experience, or a combination of both. And then applicants who meet the degree requirements but not the GPA requirements will normally be required to take our academic writing and critical thinking course, which is offered at a certain amount of times of the year that you'll be able to take ahead of time. And we hear from students that this is actually a very helpful course to take, and it really sets you up to put you back in the frame of mind of writing academic papers, referencing all of those things that helps you really be successful when you start your program. So it's definitely something to consider whether you meet the GPA requirements or not.
Yeah, we sure recommend it for all students, especially the critical thinking portion too. If it's been a while, it's great to get back into that groove. So when you're going to do your assignments, you're not wrestling with the writing, you're wrestling with the content, which is what we want. Yeah.
Exactly. And to go on to the flexible admissions, if you don't know if you fit quite in the box of the standard admissions, we also have flexible admissions. So that could mean applicants who do not meet the requirements on the last slide, normally 6 years of relevant work experience or an equivalent combination of education and experience, a combination of post-secondary and professional accredited qualifications, and then generally required to take that academic writing and critical thinking course. So this is on a case-by-case basis. And if you just aren't sure where you fit in or what that means for you, we welcome you to have a conversation with our enrollment team, and they'll be able to guide you through this application process and answer any questions that you may have. But yeah, don't count yourself out if you feel that you don't fit quite into that standard admissions model.
Yeah.
And then how to apply. So to start off the process, there is an online application fee of $126.28. And then there'll be some supporting documents to add to your application. So first we have official transcripts. Those need to arrive to the university sealed from whichever institutions you have attended previously. Right now, there's some institutions that are just doing email transcripts with COVID and everything like that. And we do accept those as well. So don't worry about that if there's some questions around there. Next, we have our detailed resume. And this can be quite a bit longer than your typical job application resume or anything like that. It can really be as lengthy as you need to really communicate everything that you want us to know, as far as obviously your educational experience, your professional background, but also your volunteer, any specific projects that you want to speak about that really would apply to this program. Definitely put all of that information in.
Even conferences or things that you've led or interests that you have, those are important factors too.
Yeah, exactly. And then to go with that, we have our personal statement. So this is a great document to really help you put in the frame of mind for us, but also for yourself, of why you want to be in this program, what you hope to get out of it. Again, going into a little bit more about your experiences and who you are. And this helps us to know if this will be a good program for you and if you'll be successful in it. Hilary, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add about what kinds of things you look for in those statements.
I mean, that's just such a key document. It's why you, why now? How do you see yourself contributing to the cohort model, and what do you think you might take away from it? It's really important to just really speak, about what's drawing you now, and how your background, what you're doing in your life, all sort of threads in to give us an idea of the why this program for you particularly.
Yeah, exactly. And then finally on our list there is the 2 letters of reference. So The ideal is if one can come from an educational reference and one can come from a professional background. There is a little wiggle room on that though. Say if you've been out of academia for a number of years or anything like that. And it is best if those can come from a professional email address or something that helps us verify who they are and where the reference is coming from.
Yep.
Okay. So some key dates. The next intake is July 12th, 2021, and then the application deadline is April 12th, 2021. And if you're looking ahead to the next year, that will be July 11th, 2022, with a April 11th, 2022 application deadline. So it is coming up pretty soon. If you do want to apply for this summer, I definitely start the process on that. And yeah, reach out with any questions that you may have for this, coming up.
Yeah, because we're fielding a lot of applications right now. And Natalie is asking the question, how many spaces do you have each year? Well, pedagogically, you don't want to get too many people into a program, but the cohorts usually end up being about in the 20s. So, 22, 24, 26. It's not super huge, but that's a beautiful amount of students to mix and mingle with. We haven't been up into the 30s in some time. And I kind of prefer those smaller classes. They just, everybody has a voice, everything can get done in a beautiful, timely way. So that's usually what we're looking at.
Mm-hmm. And then of course, financial aid is a really big part of planning going back to school. So this is the contact information for our financial aid team. They are extremely helpful. I've used them for when I was going back to school and applying to Royal Roads, and they were just super awesome in being able to identify opportunities that I didn't know about, helping me through my student loan applications and things like that. And I always like to say with this, Royal Roads does have a smaller student body than some other bigger institutions. So it means that you actually have a pretty good chance of getting some of these funding options. So it really doesn't hurt to try and put your applications out there.
Totally agreed. Some of them go untaken, unspoken for. So Marina is asking, do I need letters and personal statement to enroll in the academic writing and critical thinking? No, that's out of continuing studies. Oh, I see Bev Hill is just answering you. Thanks, Bev. Yeah, you can just go right to continuing studies and enroll. That's a non-credit course. But certificate programs, you would need a full application for sure, because that's for credit. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
exactly.
Go ahead there, Christy. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a question from Wahaj about scholarships. So yeah, I would definitely recommend you reach out to this team and see what's available for you there. And finally, our enrollment services. So Bev, who's been helping out in the chat box today, is a wonderful example of our enrollment team. It's definitely, yeah, thank you, Bev. But we have an amazing team that's here to help. So we have both the contact information if you would be applying as a Canadian student, and also the international enrollment contact information there as well. So don't hesitate to reach out. They are there to help answer your questions and help you along the way. And with that, that brings us to the end of our presentation today. Thank you for sticking around. I recognize that it is a few minutes past 1, so we really appreciate you all joining us here today. If we didn't answer your questions today, also again, just follow up with us afterwards and we'd be happy to continue this conversation.
Yeah, and please reach out. I'm also available for conversations, and thanks so much, everybody. It's just, it's great to have been with you here, although we didn't get to see you all, and we hope we will see you soon in the MAEEC program. So thanks so much, Christy.
Yeah, thanks everybody. And to the team behind the scenes, again, Bev, and we also had Karen helping out with tech support. It takes a village to put on these sessions, and we're really happy that you could all join us today. And yeah, hope to hear from you soon. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Bye-bye for now.